Hello and welcome to the Jesus Witch podcast. I'm your host, Lina El-Sayali, also known as Lina the Jesus Witch on TikTok and Instagram. The Jesus Witch podcast is a show dedicated to opening the conversation about including Jesus in witchery practices. The goal of this podcast is to not be evangelical. The goal is to spread the love, light, truth, acceptance, and oneness that is Jesus Christ himself. Here at the Jesus Witch podcast, we believe all people are loved by God and all people are loved by Jesus. We believe in community and the power of fellowship. We believe in giving whatever you reasonably can to help your neighbor who's in need. And above all, we believe in the power of creating a relationship with Jesus that is authentic and unique to you. Join me for new episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast every single Monday, and be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. Hello, friend, and welcome to this week's episode of the Jesus Witch podcast. I am your host, Lina El-Sayali, also known as Lina the Jesus Witch on Instagram and on TikTok. Today on the podcast, we have a very special guest, the legendary, the one, the only Hannah from Spirituali.TEA. I am so freaking excited about this episode and for you to listen to it. During this conversation I had with Hannah, we talked a lot about demonology and demonology, and we also talked about being a Christian witch and what that means. Hannah also works with other deities outside of the Abrahamic pantheon, so we discussed her experiences with those deities and how she incorporates them in with Jesus and the Abrahamic God. It was just a really awesome conversation to have, and I was so excited that Hannah gave me the opportunity to speak with her and share this conversation here with you. Before we hop into this episode, I just wanted to remind you, the Jesus Witch podcast is now on Patreon. All Patreon members get every single episode of the Jesus Witch podcast a week early, ad-free, and they get extended show notes pages. If you're interested in supporting the show and listening to this episode as well as every other episode of the Jesus Witch podcast ad-free, click the Patreon link in the show notes page. Now, without any further ado, here's my conversation with Hannah from Spirituali.TEA. So this week on the Jesus Witch podcast, I am so excited because I am being joined by Hannah from Spirituali.TEA.
Hello.
Hello. I love your username. Yeah, I
Thank
love
you.
your pun. It's just the best. So can you like firstly start by introducing yourself and like who you are and what you do?
Firstly, thank you for saying spirituality, because so many people call me Spiritual.TEA, and it's like they're forgetting the second I at the it's spirituality.
It's
yeah,
the point.
That's why I put it in my TikTok bio, pronounced like spirituality, because so many people were calling me Spiritual.TEA. So thank you for that, first of all. I am also a Christian witch, and I post stuff about that on TikTok and other fun witchy content. I try to be entertaining.
I think you're entertaining. I personally really like your, like if I was a witchy mom. Series.
Yeah.
I've had similar conversations with my own 6-year-old. Like,
Mm-hmm.
So they're a lot more accurate than you probably even think that they are. But anyway, I wanted to have you on here for a very specific reason, because you work with a whole other side of, I feel like, being a Christian witch than I do personally, which is the divine infernal. So for those of us who don't know, including myself, what is the divine infernal, or what does that like infer?
Yeah, so basically I work with demons. I work with the darker spiritual side, and for some people, even if you're not like a Christian witch, it's considered a taboo in some respects. So I'm definitely excited to be able to talk about and hopefully debunk some falsehoods about what it's like working with them, and how yes, a Christian witch can work with demons.
I mean, demons are in the Bible. Like,
yes, they are.
So who are the specific, do you have specific names of demons that you work with?
Yes, so I worked with Lilith the longest. And then I just started working with Lord Beelzebub for something kind of specific that I don't talk about publicly for privacy reasons, but he's here too. And then Asmodeus wanted to join in, and I'm like, I don't have any room. on my altar. I'm in my dorm room. I'm in like an 8x10 space. So I'm like, if you can help me, I made a video about this too. I'm like, if you can help me find a good sized apartment in my price range, I will give the Infernal their own altar. A week later, I had the apartment. So now Asmodeus is here too.
That's really sick.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you refer to, that's funny because I work with Lilith, but I personally don't see her as a demon. I see her as a human that's misunderstood,
Yeah.
which is interesting because Lilith has very many sides. So some people I feel like would work with the more human aspects of Lilith. Others would work with the same or the demonology aspect of her. But I feel like at the root of it, like, I mean, you could speak for how you work with her, but for me, I work with her for like that dark feminine power, like learning how
Yes.
to, yeah, like get confidence, get strength. So either like way, if you're working with her in the like quote unquote light version or the quote unquote dark version, you're kind of working with her for the same like things. So just with that, like to piggyback off of that example, why would you work with somebody like King Oz? I'm going to butcher that name, Asmodeus.
Yeah, Asmodeus. So there's a couple of reasons. There are many other demons who have multiple aspects to them as well, because you're right, there is like the demon aspect of Lilith and then the human aspect of her as being the first woman. I can't speak for all of the demons, but like for example, Lucifer has his demonic aspect, his fallen angel aspect, and there is also a Roman god who went by the name of Lucifer. So that's another aspect. Leviathan has his demon aspect and then his like dragon water serpent aspect. So there's many different sides to the infernal divine. But also I very much believe that it's just good to have a good balance of the light and the dark. And working with demons has helped me with that. I don't believe, and this is kind of a UPG of mine, but I don't believe that angels and demons are enemies. I just believe that they're opposites. And you'll see lots of other witches, on Witch Talk who work with entities like Hades or Hecate, who are very dark deities, but they're not evil. And so that is how I view the demons as well. Yes, they are dark entities, but they're not evil, like they're sometimes portrayed as.
That's interesting. I mean, like, that's been something I've been exploring in my own practice is like the light with the dark. Because I'm very much like a lighter witch. I very much stay with the like love all, like let's stay here kind of thing. Just because that's where I'm comfortable and that's where like, that's what works for me now. That's not to say
Mm-hmm.
like in 10 years from now I'm not going to be part of the dark. Also, like my husband, totally interested in the demonic aspect. So this is going to be the episode that he actually listens to. So hi, Jack, the only one that he's probably going to ever listen to in his entire life. Not that he doesn't support me. He's a Gemini. That's all I have to say.
Oh, I see how it is.
Yeah, I mean, no hate to Geminis. We all hate Geminis because we all want to be them. Let's be real.
Yeah, for real.
That's it. But so. And now a quick break from our show to talk about a few different ways you can help support the Jesus Witch podcast. One way you can help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast is by becoming a Patreon supporter of the show. Every supporter of the Jesus Witch podcast on Patreon gets access to our monthly community oracle card readings, as well as access to a secret Discord channel in the Jesus Witch Church. In that channel, you can leave any Jesus Witch questions or suggestions that you may have, and it's just a better place for us to connect as a Patreon community. We currently have 5 different Patreon tiers for you to choose from to help expand your knowledge on Jesus and Christian witchery. The first tier that we offer is the Mercury tier, and this provides written transcripts of each episode of the Jesus Witch podcast to make them more accessible and easier to take notes from. The next tier that we have is the Fool, and that provides early access to the Jesus Witch podcast as well as ad-free episodes. The following tier is the Magician tier, which helps to expand your Jesus Witch knowledge with tarot spreads to help you connect with the Abrahamic pantheon and monthly Bible-based spellbook pages. In the Hierophant tier, we go even further with Bible-based spell work. Each month, members of this tier get access to an additional Bible-based spellbook page. I also send you a mini spell kit every single month with the ingredients to cast your spell. With this tier, you also get access to a monthly spellcasting circle that happens over Zoom, where we cast a spell together, and it's a really fun time. Our final tier is the High Priestess tier. This tier gets everything from the previous tiers, as well as a one-on-one call with me over Zoom every single month to talk about your practice, where it's going, and what your goals are spiritually. Another way to help support the Jesus Witch podcast is by shopping at the Sun and Moon Jesus Witchery shop on Etsy. Over on my Etsy shop, I offer Talking to Jesus tarot readings, Christian witch mystery boxes, Bible-based spell oils, astrology readings, and so much more. You can also help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast by sending a donation directly to my PayPal or Cash App. You can find the links to both of those or any of the other ways to help support the Jesus Witch podcast in the show notes page. And a quick reminder, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcasting app you're currently listening to us on, and give us a rating of 5 stars because that helps to get the word out about the show. If you would like to connect with me further, be sure to join our free Discord group, The Jesus Witch Church, and give me a follow on TikTok and on Instagram at Lena the Jesus Witch. Now let's go back to our show. I guess, I forgot where I was going with that. What was the thought that came before all of that about that? Whatchamacallit?
Just why would I want to work with demons in general?
Yeah, why would you want to work with demons in general? There we go.
Yeah. If you just want to embrace your dark side, that every human being has light and dark, and it's a balancing act. I feel like I don't like a lot of the love and light only witches. It's don't ever be angry, don't ever be sad. It's that's so unrealistic. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's ways to channel those emotions in healthy ways, and there's practical ways of doing that, like therapy and shadow work and things like that. But if you want to incorporate it into your spiritual practice as well, demons are great for that. And I don't think that they're necessarily for beginners, because they don't care and they will put you through the ringer and they will make you put in the work. But if you're disciplined enough, they can be really great too.
Those are I kind of would equate that, as you said before, gods like Hecate or Hades, or even Loki. They seem to be yes. more kind of just strict and disciplined. I mean, at the end of the day, in the traditional Hebrew, right, and where we have Satan in our Bible, it's yes. just the Satan or something like that. I totally butchered that. I apologize. But it's something very similar to that, but it just means opposition. It doesn't
adversary. Yes. So I do. I view it as a balancing act. I have my guardian angel in my practice, and I have Lilith and, like I said, other demons in my practice, but Lilith has been here the longest, and I've had both of them in the room together at the same time, and it's fine. It's not conflicting energies, there's tension or anything like that. It's just opposite.
Yeah, it's just two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, what you said before, the light cannot exist with the dark. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess my main question would be just there's a king of heaven, is there a king of the inferno? Is there a head? So basically, I'm asking you, is there a devil? I guess I don't know.
No, I wouldn't say that there's a devil, or that there is one specific demon that rules above the rest. It also depends on what mythology you're reading, what book you're reading, because just with anything with witchcraft, sometimes different books will say different things. There's, I want to say it's called Goetia, I think is how you, it's a certain Solomonic demonic practice that ranks certain demons as king or lord. That's why you'll hear Lord Lucifer or King Asmodeus or those different titles. But again, it depends on what book you're reading and what practice you're looking into. I personally do not subscribe to Solomonic or Goetia demonic work, because that kind of views you taking in your demon as a slave, and I don't believe in bringing any divine being in as my slave and having them do my bidding. And I just feel the karmic repercussions for that would be crazy. Yeah. There is a rank order, but it's going to differ depending on what belief system you want to subscribe to. So I would just recommend, doing research and finding the practice that works best for you. And I say that about witchcraft in general. Make your craft your own. And it's the same with, demonolatry and demonology as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, like a lot of people are like, Lena, what's your like exact path? I'm like, my
Eclectic.
yeah, I'm like just not even eclectic. I'm a chaos. I'm straight up chaos witch. Like, who's that
Yeah.
dude? Riot Adams on TikTok.
Yes.
His pill is what's it called? The Pringle hex. I was like, ooh, if I hext people, that'd be me.
Doing divination with the French fries.
Yes.
Yes. Whenever I did my bone throws, people would ask me if they were French fries, and I'm like, no, they're bones. But I understand now why you would think that.
I mean, like, I don't want to steal his vibe, but I do eat McDonald's quite often. So maybe if I feel like this particular fry is more worthy than the rest, I'll try and make it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But no, that makes a lot of sense. Like that makes a lot, like, it's again, like just balancing things out. It's creating like a different sort of way of looking at things. And then like, I also like the whole perspective of there's not like a specific like demon like calling the shots. Like there's not like this one like evil entity. I don't know. That might be something that I have to further deconstruct on, because like,
yeah. And some, again, some people might say like, oh, Lucifer is the most powerful. It depends on who you ask and what you read. But at the end of the day, it's another one of those things that you just kind of have to mold it into your own practice and your own systems.
I mean, and we're also working with, like, not for nothing, we're working with the more, like, fringe side of Christianity. Because even, like, like, demons like Beelzebub are mentioned in the Bible. Like,
yes,
these are, at the end of the day, these are Christian, or, I don't like that word because that's Old Testament. So, like, Abrahamic deities.
Yeah.
I feel like it almost like is, because I very much stricted, like with my practice, I like to stay with the people, not the people, the deities and like the entities and things that are mentioned within the Bible or extra canonical text. I don't really move out of that like Abrahamic pantheon personally.
Yeah.
To each their own, like everybody needs to follow their own path, as you said before. But for somebody like me with my logic, it would be permissible to work with, like a demon like Beelzebub or Lilith, she's not mentioned in our Bible anymore, because just like Asherah, she was pulled out. But all like the real divine feminine.
Yeah.
Like, we're lucky we even got Mother Mary's name. Like,
right.
We are lucky. Like, thinking about it. Oh
yeah, for real. Or any of the women in the Bible, because you can find books about like women in the Bible and their roles and what they did, and I wish that was talked about more. But kind of going back to what is in the Bible and what is not. I also I do subscribe to some things that are in the Bible, but obviously not everything. And I also get a lot of my belief systems from the Nag Hammadi Library.
What and library?
The Nag Hammadi Library.
Okay, I'm gonna gotta Google.
Yes. So these are basically like pieces of the Bible that were missing. Yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah, it's spelled like Naghammadi, I think. Nag Hammadi.
Got it. Cool. If you didn't spell that, I would have never got it.
Yeah. I was looking at it seriously yesterday, and I wish I had my notes with me for one of my podcasts that I'm doing on my show. And there is, I can't remember which one it's in, but there is one of the books in there that talks about balancing the light and the dark. And it talks about demons, and it talks about the goddess Sophia, and it's like all of these things, and Jesus refers to himself as androgynous. Like, it's amazing.
I mean, I saw like somebody on TikTok, I think he's a trans pastor, and that's like his whole like
yes
that he talks about is he's like, well, if you believe that in the virgin conception, then Jesus could have only had double X chromosomes. I'm like, I don't personally subscribe to the virgin conception anymore in my practice, but
I have mixed feelings about that, because if Jesus was biologically female, it had to have been hidden, because living in such a patriarchal society, him preaching in the temples at age 12 would have been controversial as is.
Mm-hmm.
But if he was a girl, she would have been executed before even hitting puberty because of this. Like, if it was taboo for Jesus to be saying the things that he did to get crucified at age 33, it would have been an explosion if it had been a woman saying those things.
But to bring it back to divine infernal, you're so concise with everything. You very much know what you're talking about. Like you, I get a lot of my sources outside of biblical text.
Yeah.
The Bible's great and all, but it's just like super it's translated.
Yeah. That's one way of putting it.
Yeah. But that's I think it would be useful to find like where or whatchamacallit. So this I'm gonna link this
Nag Hammadi Library. So you can find it online for free on a website. I think it's called gnosis.org.
Mm-hmm.
GNOSIS. Yeah, you can find it for free on there. On my TikTok, if you go to my link tree, I have like a free witchcraft and spirituality resource list, and it's in there somewhere.
I will link that in the show notes page because that's a useful resource.
Yeah. And I have stuff for Christian witchcraft in there and just witchcraft in general. And I think I have a website on there about demonology and demonolatry. So
here's a good question to bring it back. So what's the difference between demonology and demonolatry?
Yeah, so demonology is the study of demons. You can research demons all day long and never interact with one, never work with one or worship one. It's just the study of demons. Whereas demonolatry is actually interacting with them, working with them, worshiping them, and so on.
That makes sense. Oh, interesting. And so when you say you work with demons, how do you work with them? Like, do you have what kind of spells do you do with them? Do you have to give them offerings? Like, what does that look like? What does that relationship look like?
I treat it like deity work in any other respect. Yes, I do give them offerings, but they're also very realistic in that, I can give them some Girl Scout cookies from my cupboard. It's not like I need a blood offering or anything really weird like that. Like some people have those kinds of stereotypes. Or if they want something really specific, but it's like, hey, I'm going to have to wait for payday in order to get you this thing. They understand, they can wait. Yes, they will want their offering or their share of the deal eventually, but they also understand that humans have limits. And so, yeah, for me, it's very much like deity work. I have Lilith and Beelzebub on my main altar right now. When I move, I'll be giving the Infernal their own altar space because they do like their own space, but they understand that I live in a tiny room right now. So yeah, they have wants when it comes to working with them, but like I said, they understand that we have limitations. I just do spell work with them based on their association. So everyone's different, but I do perform baneful magic every now and then, only when necessary. I don't do it often, but I will recruit them for that. Or, for example, Beelzebub is very protective. So if I'm doing a protection spell, I'll incorporate him. Or Lilith and Asmodeus have to do with love and sexuality. So if I always do ethical love spells, but when performing ethical love spells and things of that nature, I incorporate them. So I usually just go based off of their associations.
What do you have on your altar for Lilith? And you said Beelzebub you have an altar for currently. And then when you get your new place, what are you planning on adding to your altar space for the divine infernal? Yes, I was saying it.
Yeah. So I have a really big statue for Lilith on my altar, but that was a gift. It was not something that I bought for myself. When my parents destroyed all of my things and I moved away, I set up an Amazon wish list to get everything replaced, and someone graciously bought this really beautiful Lilith statue for me.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I have that on my altar and a necklace with her sigil on it that I did by myself. And then I have a necklace with Beelzebub's sigil on it. And it's funny. So this was again one of those things where he was working for me with this thing, and he was just like, hey, in return, I want you to get, this necklace with my sigil on it. And I'm like, we sat down and we picked it out, and I'm like, this is coming from the UK, so it's going to take a few weeks. And, we agreed that he would be patient and it was okay. And, understanding again that humans have limits and sometimes things take time. But I remember when the necklace arrived, I was at school and I didn't know that it had arrived yet, but I could just feel his energy being like, hey, the necklace. And I'm like, I don't know when it's going to be here. It's coming from the UK. I'm sorry. I don't know. I got home from class that day and it was in my mailbox.
Oh,
so wow. It's like he was telling me that it had arrived.
That's crazy.
That's
really crazy.
One of my craziest moments that I've had with the divine in general. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I have that. When I move, there's lots of really cool like artwork and statues of the infernal divine that you can get from Etsy.
Yeah.
So I plan on getting like maybe a plaque with Asmodeus's sigil, or some other artwork or more jewelry or things like that. Maybe sneak some candles. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to have candles in my new apartment, but I'm probably gonna sneak them anyway. Yeah, statues, crystals, artwork, things like that. And then there's also very basic offerings you can give to them, like if there's certain music that they like, or flowers from outside, just it's very similar to the kinds of offerings that you would give to a deity.
I mean, I don't know, because you work with Lilith too, but I don't know if you've noticed, but she really likes Doja Cat, and specifically the songs Freak and Cybersex.
And anything to do with like sexuality, embracing your feminine power, like that is Lilith all the way.
I feel like working with her like completely changed my music taste, because I used to listen to some like really, really emo music, and now I listen to all like empowering rap music, and I'm like, and it's all mostly, except for Lil Nas X, it's all female rappers.
That's awesome.
The only reason I listen to him is because he's hated by the evangelicals too.
Yes. I listen to a lot of metal music.
I know, I've seen on your page.
Yeah, but like my favorite band, you have never met a more feminist group of heterosexual men ever. So it works.
I've noticed that too about Lilith, because she's honestly the only divine entity that's ever reached out to my husband. So I feel like she really respects men who, like, I'm like, in our relationship, I'm definitely the more like overbearing personality, and I have a lot of needs and wants that he has to fulfill.
I know how that is.
Graciously takes it on, like works like 12 hours a day so that I can stay home with my kids. I can be like the kind of mom that I want to be. And she reached out to him. She started like as this like yellow spider. She was coming to him at work and stuff. So I feel like she really does, as much as people want to paint her as like a man-hating kind of deity, I think she is a man-hating kind of deity when they deserve to be hated. But when they are respectful, she's
imagine that.
I mean, like, common sense and stuff. Who would have thought?
Don't be a misogynist and you'll have a demon like you. Who'd have thunk, right? Like, Well, Lilith is very caring and very protective. Like, she has that, like, motherly side to her.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of her lore that I've read was that she tried to be a mother, but, like, had several miscarriages. Or like the baby just wouldn't survive, and that's why she tends to mother her like devotees a little bit more, because she wants to fill that mothering role. I don't know if you've read the same.
Yes. So have you ever read the Book of Lilith?
No.
By Robert something. So it's technically a work of fiction, but it's kind of like a UPG, like this author's interpretation of the Lilith story. UPG is unverified personal gnosis. So it's like what you experience with a deity or an entity in your personal practice, but it might not necessarily be like documented in their lore or their mythology, if that makes sense. So the Book of Lilith is, you know, technically, legally a work of fiction, but it's like the author's personal interpretation of the Lilith story. And I don't want to spoil it, but it like changed my views on her, because when I was first getting into this stuff, I was like, I don't know if I want to work with Lilith because she's a demon and I'm scared. And then I read that book and I was like, oh my God, like changed everything. So I would definitely, anyone who is interested in working with Lilith should go read the Book of Lilith. It's really, really good.
That's cool. I'm gonna get that.
Yeah.
I have misquoting Jesus at my library, so after that, then I'll get the Book of Lilith, and they'll be very confused. Furtherly confused about my book choices. You know, we go in there, we grab like, you know, some nice things for the kids, little books about trains, cars. My eldest is reading Percy Jackson now. And then, you know, we grab books about reincarnation and, you know, like things about Jesus and, you know, things about tarot. And they're like, what are you? I'm like, just exploring.
Yep.
Don't worry about it.
Yep. Ain't nobody's business.
You know, I mean, like, libraries tend to be very open-minded, but I live in upstate New York. Sometimes I gotta be a little careful. I've already got local people on my Facebook page trying to be like, what you're doing is demonic, you're corrupting your kids. And I'm like,
girl, I live in Indiana. I know.
I know. Yeah, I don't deal with it like half as much. Like my kid had a birthday party and we all sat there as like parents and I read the kids' tarot cards. Like, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds.
That's awesome. That is the kind of mom that I want to be.
It was so fun. I'm not even that was probably one of my favorite moments as a mother.
Yes. I have a 7-year-old sister and I want to get her the Tarot for Kids deck.
Yeah. Ooh, but your parents probably would not be.
There's mom and stepdad, and then there's dad and stepmom who are cool. So the 7-year-old is their daughter. My dad is in Church of Satan, so they're fine. But yeah. Yeah.
just the polarity of like,
yeah,
a little like, oh, okay.
So obviously my parents are divorced.
Could you imagine if they stayed together and you were raised by like a crazy Christian and a Satanist?
Well, Church of Satan came after the divorce, but yeah, my dad is like an elite in the Church of Satan. Yeah.
So what does that mean? So firstly, what is the Church of Satan? Because I know that they don't worship like Satan.
Correct. They view Satan as a metaphor or just a symbol of rebellion, going against the man or society or, you know, whatever the case it is. My dad described it as an organization for non-joiners. For those of you interested, I do have a playlist on my TikTok called Church of Satan where I sat down with my dad and asked him questions. But basically, so being a priest for the Church of Satan is not something that you do. Like, you don't go out telling people about it. It's more of a title that is like rewarded to you for your hard work and dedication towards the organization. So, and there is a book in the Church of Satan's official canon called The Satanic Warlock. And my dad did the illustrations for that book. He's an artist, he's an author, and yeah, did drawings for Church of Satan official canon. The High Priest Peter Gilmore has some of my dad's artwork in his house.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's really sick. Mm-hmm. Because like as a priest of the Church of Satan, does like, you know, like on Sundays you go to church for a sermon. Do they go to like on Saturdays? Do they go to the non-church for?
No. So there's no like service. They'll have like group meetups or like conventions, for lack of better words. I don't know how else to describe it, but they'll have like outings where they'll go to like an art museum or a play. It's very artsy.
Yeah.
And so, but it is very like secretive because of a lot of the protesters and things. So like they'll get an idea, okay, we're going to have our meetup in this state, in this town, but they don't get the exact location until like an hour beforehand to prevent protesters from showing up.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, evangelicals can be really, yeah. They just
Yeah.
like they I feel like they just forget about all those verses where like literally like the Bible verse of the day on YouVision is like, if you love each other, then they will see your truth. Like it's 1 John 3:18. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other, but let us show the truth by our actions.
Imagine that.
Imagine.
Wow.
Like I was shocked when I saw this new version this morning. So I'm like, wow, Christians read those verses? You wouldn't think they do by the way that they act.
Oh my God. Well, they think that their actions are, we have to tell everyone that they're going to go to hell so that they'll be scared and convert to Christianity so that they won't go to hell. And that's going to show that we love them. Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure it is.
While Judaism, the religion that it's based off of, doesn't believe in hell. Most like Jews.
Thank you.
They believe in reincarnation for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of them just believe like you go to sleep until the Messiah comes, but
Yep.
none of them believe in hell. Like, I don't know. I also recently learned that like most of my ancestors are Jewish, and I've always held a lot of Jewish beliefs, and I'm like, makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think the word hell in the Bible was a mistranslation to like tar pits in Greece or something like that.
There were like two. One, there's a mistranslation of hell to Sheol, which Sheol is like a low vibrational place that's where they believe in like Judaism, like low vibrational beings go. I might be like misquoting that, but that's what, from my understanding, that's what it is. Then there's the other place, Gehenna, which was a place that literally people would go and like sacrifice their children because they thought that they needed to do that to like worship gods, or to I don't remember if they were doing it specifically to worship the Abrahamic God, but this was an actual place, and Jesus once referred to like people going to Gehenna because they were being like like basically like horrible, like killing children is pretty nasty. So he was saying like don't do that because otherwise you're acting like you're in Gehenna, but that did not mean
going to hell. Yeah.
That was something added by the, quite honestly, I'm sorry to anybody who practices Catholic folk magic, but that was the Catholic Church. That's like in like the what?
In my experience, the people who practice Catholic folk magic or who even subscribe to some Catholic beliefs know that overall Catholicism has had some pretty bad ideas put in. So it's like, you know what? You're self-aware, babes. I love that.
Yeah, no, that's important to be like self-aware and like realize like even as somebody who believes in the Bible and like works with the Bible pretty closely, I'm like, I'll read something in there and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure the church added that because that just doesn't seem right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, or somebody twisted, like poor Paul, man, his words got twisted up so much. Like firstly starting with his name, like God never renamed him. Like, his name is Saul. Paul is just the way to say Saul. But his name is Saul. Like, that's my cat's name is Saul.
Well, the analogy that I like to use is that, the Bible was written by humans. And as a human, how many times have you made mistakes on your spiritual journey? We probably all have. And so are there things in the Bible that I believe were divined through the divine and were written down? Yes, absolutely. But how many times have you been sitting down and talking to the divine and you're like, okay, am I talking to my angel or is this the pizza that I had last night? And I fully believe that happened too. And it was written down in the Bible. So I think that a lot of the shit that Paul said just could have been like, I think this is God. I think I'm going to write it down just in case. I don't know. Like,
I mean, and he even says in one of the books, like, this is my opinion. Like, I don't know if this is God.
Yes.
And I'm like, you know, we like a self again. We like a self-aware queen. Like, okay, at least you know.
Yes.
At least you know.
But no, we have to listen to everything that these
Yeah.
mortal men who lived 2,000 years ago had to say.
And quite honestly, like traditional, like speaking of Paul, like traditional Christianity is basically Paul worship. It's not Jesus worship. They
Yeah.
follow what Paul follows, like
Yep.
not what Jesus. I personally like. Obviously, I this might just be ego, and you know, so somebody can come and correct me if I'm wrong. But I personally feel like the relationship that people like you and I have with Jesus is a more accurate relationship because we understand who he is a lot more.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
we
the
don't,
Bible even says that the disciples didn't understand him.
yeah,
So,
like and they were with they were with him. And
mhm.
there's like so many verses about like those who have ears, let them listen. Like he knew people weren't going to understand. It was really
Yep.
just a select few who like get it, you know, like the girls who get it, and the girls who don't.
Hmm.
Like, that's really what it the Bible is.
Yes. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
Yeah. No, it's a good book if you know how to decipher it, you know.
Yep.
And reading like extra canonical texts like the
Nag Hammadi.
Nag Hammadi. I cannot pronounce
It's
it.
okay.
I'm so bad at it. And like books like the Book of Enoch, or like even the Ethiopian Bible that has like all the other, like it has the Maccabees in it.
Yeah.
It has like I think the Infancy Gospel of Thomas in it as well. Reading other things like the Book of Mary is important to try
Yeah.
just getting like a full picture
Hmm.
of what was going on. You know what I'm saying? And then being able to bring your own beliefs into it so that when you start like saying, hey, I want to work with demons, you could be like, yeah, that's permissible because of X, Y, and Z that's in the Bible.
Yeah, and there's still so much that I haven't read, and I feel like I'm behind. But there's a world of information out there. It's hard to keep up with. Like I've read a lot of the text from the Nag Hammadi, but I've not read everything. I know the synopsis of the Book of Enoch, but I've never actually read it. And I know the synopsis of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but I've never read those. So there's
Yeah.
so much out there. But I guess that's another thing that I want to say to anyone listening is, yeah, there's a lot of info out there. Don't feel bad if you can't absorb all of it all at once.
That is actually something that especially as somebody who's trying to educate others on Christian witchery and like Jesus witchery, I feel very guilty about because I don't get to read like all these books all the time. I'm lucky if I get to sit down with my Bible for 10 minutes a day because I have kids and they're
Mm-hmm.
young and I'm homeschooling them. And it's, I have a lot on my plate besides just diving into my spirituality. And I kind of gotten to the point where it's like, if I can have 10 minutes to read something that's outside of the Bible, then I have that 10 minutes. If I don't, it's not changing my spirituality right now. I can
Yep.
still be a good teacher without it. And, my kids are going to grow up and there's going to become a point where I can throw an iPad at my little one and be able to read these things. But right
Yeah.
now I can't. And that's the season of life I'm in. But I'm still
Mm-hmm.
following, basically God's path for me and not denying it because I feel like I can't. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So that's like to go for other witches as well. Like, even if you don't have all the time in the world to read all of these texts front to back, don't think you have to do it. Like, it's not, as long as you have a strong connection with spirit and you have that intention there and you're really like trying to build a faith, that's all that really matters at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day. You don't, these things, like, obviously eventually you're going to want to read them so you can be educated on some
Right.
level, but you don't have to rush. And there's so much information out there, so you don't have to read everything at once. And you can
Mm-hmm.
take time and live the seasons of life that you're supposed to live in. I have one last question for you,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of Christian witches who ask me about working with other gods and goddesses, like outside of the Christian pantheon. I personally don't, so you're the first person that I've actually like sat down and talked to that does. So how do you do that? How do you view your relationship with them versus like the Abrahamic God? How does that like whole thing?
Okay, so for anyone wanting to do this, I would recommend looking into a belief system called Christo-paganism. It is a thing. It is a lot more popular than you might think. So, and again, I'm so glad that I was looking through the Nag Hammadi literally yesterday because now all this stuff is like fresh in my head. So in those books, Jesus talks about the existence of other gods and how they were created and how they were made. And um I like to, it's kind of my interpretation, but that, thou shalt not put any other gods before me, that was directed at a certain group of people at a certain specific time. That was not directed to the entire world. So I think it is perfectly permissible to worship other gods, and there's mention of other gods in the actual Bible and, in other non-biblical texts, but that have to do with Christianity, like the Nag Hammadi or whatever. But yeah, I started researching Christo-paganism, and I very much stuck to Christian witchcraft for a long time, and then Aries appeared to me in a dream, and I was still very early in my practice at the time, and I was like, I'm not ready. And he's like, okay, calm down. I'll be back later. Bye. And I'm like, what do you mean we back later? What is it? And so he's here now. And also, I've just kind of learned through learning that it is okay to worship other gods. They will show up when they want to be with you. Like Loki sent me so many bugs before he does like spiders and flies and stuff. And
no,
I just kept telling, like, I'm not ready. I'm in a very weird time in my life. Please just wait. And he would, like, a week would go by, and then there'd be like a dozen flies on my door. And so finally I was just like, fine, you can come. And then, and then Aries came. And so I just kind of was like, well, these other gods are clearly reaching out to me. Mm-hmm. So they must see some kind of potential, and they're okay with Yeshua being here, and Yeshua's okay with them coming in. So I guess we'll just do this. It might not always be that easy for everyone else, though, especially if you grew up evangelical, mm-hmm. and it's hard for you to swallow the idea of working with other gods as well. So that's why I recommend looking into Christo-paganism. But it is possible, and there are lots of people who do it.
Yeah, and I even think like I think that, Jewish people could even work with other gods, because like, again, I could be wrong, because I'm not part of that faith, so I don't speak for that faith.
Sure.
But I think that the whole don't put other gods before me. It doesn't say don't keep any other gods besides me.
Right.
I don't know the exact Hebrew text, but this is the interpretation that I've seen. This is the interpretation that I've asked others and asked like what the Torah is about. And that's kind of what they've given me. So it's not do not like have another God. It's just don't put that specific God before your relationship with me.
Yeah. Well, and to my knowledge, there's different areas of Judaism, just like there's different areas of Christianity, or different mm-hmm. sects or denominations or whatever it is that you want to call it. There's different beliefs within Judaism. So it's going to depend, it's going to vary, but again, I always say you have to make your beliefs and your practice your own.
Yeah, that's important. Like really mm-hmm. My practice should not look exactly like yours. Like
correct.
Hannah's practice should not look exactly like mine.
Mm-hmm.
We should be having different experiences with our deities, and they could be similar kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I find it very interesting to work with other gods. I'm just not attracted to it personally. I had Ra reach out to me in a dream once, like the Egyptian god, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. And then I would start doing past life readings for myself, and I kept getting like Egypt a lot, and I'm like, maybe this is why, because I've worked with you before. Yes.
Well, yeah, doing that kind of research, like what are their associations? What are they there for? Because, Loki is chaos, and my entire life is chaos. And I'm like, well, that makes perfect sense. So
that's one thing, is I've started working with people and talking to people who work with different gods and different pantheons. Like sometimes I'll feel their energy. I get Hel around me a lot, like the Norse pagan goddess Hel.
She's interesting.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also think that Norse gods keep coming up for me because my husband's ancestry is Norse pagan. And mm-hmm. so obviously they're not my ancestors, I'm not trying to steal his culture, but I had his kids. So, I have to ask them about their ancestors.
Yeah. And I don't work with Hades, but I have probably made more deity candles for customers for Hades than any other god. And so just because I've made so many candles for him, he'll like hang around sometime and I'll have him like, I've developed a relationship with him where I could be like, what ingredients do you want? He'll be like, patchouli. So it is interesting how you can have these interactions with these beings, even if you don't worship or work with them.
And I found them all to be very respectful. If I like lay a boundary down and I say, hey, I don't particularly want to work with you, but thanks for hanging out. They're like, cool, bye. Like, Elle has never tried to cross that boundary with me. She knows that I'm not into working with her at this time, but she consent, right? She realizes like, hey, I'm here to help her people, like heal their religious trauma. So she's kind of like, just, giving me a little like watch over. That makes sense. Like just like with Hades with you, you're making stuff for his people. So he's kind of just like surveying the process, making sure everything's going up according to plan in the way that he prefers it to be.
Yeah, well, and Persephone's going to be leaving him soon. So during this time of year, I always open up a space to be like, if you're lonely, you can come hang out with me.
No, that's funny. She like leaves for the whole like spring and summertime, and then
and then she returns in the fall. Yes.
Nice. Yeah. Imagine that, able to have a vacation from your husband for half a year.
They love each other so much though. So when they part, it's like, oh, my heart. I don't even work with them, but it makes me so sad.
Do you think for that whole time they have no contact, or do you think they could like telepathically contact each other as like deities?
See, I don't know. I see people who will like put their candles next to each other on their altars, and you'll see like their flames flicking toward each other. Or I'll see people be like, oh, it's snowing in April. Persephone must have paid Hades a visit. Like, I don't know. I think that's one of those like to each their own belief kind of things, but I love Hades and Persephone witch talk. It's one of my favorite areas of witch talk.
It's fun. It's I don't know. I also have like a, when you grow up in the Percy Jackson generation, you have a little soft spot for the Greek gods. Like they were definitely a gateway drug for a lot of us into this lifestyle.
Yes.
Let's be real.
Absolutely.
It's by design that I'm reading that currently with my 6-year-old, just trying to solidify you're a witch. Like, but anyway, this was a really great conversation, Hannah.
Thank you so much.
The time out to do this. Just like, again, what's your TikTok so that people can come and hang out with you?
My TikTok is Spirituality, but spelled TEA because it's a pun and it's hilarious.
It is pretty funny.
Yeah, and I'm almost to 275,000. Maybe by the time this is on Spotify, I will be. But it's like
275 when I looked at it.
Oh, do I? Did I hit
it? I think so.
I was at 274.9 yesterday. So I'm like, where am I?
Yeah, look, 275.
I did it. Okay, well, still come hang out with me.
That was the best. Yeah, I was like, okay.
I want to try and get to 300 by the time I graduate in May. So let's see if we can do that.
My merely goal is to have 10,000 followers by my birthday in May.
Oh.
I think it'll happen.
I remember those days. Like, I just want to be in the creator fund. Yeah. I had one video about Jesus being married to Mary Magdalene go viral, and I gained like 6,000 followers overnight. So that was my first like viral video.
Yeah. The one with the Doja Cat song, I got 2,000 followers overnight. And I'm like, nice. Look at this.
Nice.
We were both freaking out. It's just like, I don't know. I've always fantasized about having like a little K next to my follower count. So like, if you don't follow me on TikTok, please go follow me on TikTok to like, feed my Leo midheaven and give my ego a boost. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.